Hello, welcome to episode 4 of the Wellness Connection podcast. So, today I wanted to talk to you about self care, and I wanted to talk about the reality of what self care is because we see it a lot online, particularly on places like Instagram. We see the Instagram models and the Instagram influencers, hashtag self care, and online self care often looks like being on a beach somewhere, doing a yoga pose in your active wear, and looking gorgeous, and being in a bikini and all of that stuff. And while that there may be an element of self care in some of those things, what self care really is depends on who you are and what you need and the day. So, self care, what it really is when you check in, listen to yourself, pay attention to what's going on in your body and in your life, and then prioritize what you need to do to look after yourself on that day so you can be functional and do the things you need to do. So, if self care looks like ensuring you drink enough water so you don't get tired because dehydration makes you more tired, and also your joints will be sore, and lots of other things won't work so well. Hydration is probably an episode on its own, but self-care is remembering to drink water. Self-care is remembering to eat protein with your meals because that's good for you. Lots of things in your body are made from protein, pretty much everything. Helps balance your blood glucose levels and helps you feel grounded. So self-care is eating protein, right? Self-care is also booking in for a massage, going to have a massage or a facial. It is talking to your girlfriend on the phone. It actually might be getting your tax done, because if your if your financial situation is really stressing you, or your tax is late, or you're about to be fined, the level of stress you have from worrying about that, it's like taking all the focus. Well, the best thing you can do for self-care is get that organized and get that done. So, self-care depends on the day, and it can be as simple as remember to breathe, or as complicated or big as go on a holiday, right? Everything in between. So I want you to reassess how you think about self-care. The other aspect that's important to think about when you think about self-care is don't throw at all. Okay, I've talked about it before in other episodes. I'm quite sure I've talked about perfection before. Perfection can be a real issue because if we kind of think that, oh, we need to do it all perfectly, what happens is we either go through phases where we're practicing self care and we're looking after ourselves and all that kind of stuff, or we stop because it's like, oh, I'm too busy, or I'm too stressed, or I've got this happening, or I've got that. I can't do self care right now. And what I would say to you is rather than just stop self care completely and then have to start it again, just adjust it to what's going on at the time. What can I do? So an example of that would be, obviously when you have got time and when your life is allows it to happen, or you organize your life to make it happen, because you do have to plan your life to make it happen, you will be eating well, you'll be drinking plenty of water, you'll be moving your body and getting enough sleep. That's just a basic starter pack, right, to health. And then you also might be doing yoga or doing meditation or doing other things. You might be doing an art class. You might be, whatever you're doing, listening to music, playing music, singing, dancing, whatever it is, but other things in your life to help you practice self care, to help you look after yourself. It also might look like booking those appointments at your doctor's and getting those checks and doing all of the general maintenance things we need to do, right? So, in an ideal world, we're getting a lot of those things done. We're doing all of those things. But then life does happen to you. And the truth is that there are times where it is really hard to do any of those things or do any of them well. And what happens then is exactly what I said before, is we often then just throw it out the window. We say, oh, well, I can't do self-care. It's just too hard. I'm just not doing any. And so in that time, that's where I say throw away the idea of perfection. Actually, I think you should throw it away anyway. Perfection is not going to happen. And say, what can I do today to practice self care? So, an example would be when I was in hospital with my mother when she was in palliative care. It was very stressful. I was sleeping away from home and I wasn't really getting the diet that I needed. because I could only had sort of hospital food and relying on other people, that kind of thing. And I wasn't able to go to the gym, and there's a whole bunch of things that I wasn't able to do that I would normally do to practice self care. I could remember to breathe though, so I did that. I would kind of go, Fiona, are you breathing? How about just stop and take a breath? I could go and make myself a cup of tea and just remember to breathe for a few minutes while I did that. I had my phone, I had music on my phone, so I was able sometimes just to pop my headphones in, pop on a song or a podcast or a book or something if I wanted to distract myself, or something I could sing along to, or something that would help me manage my stress. I could make sure I had some protein in the sandwich I got from the what is it, cafeteria, canteen, whatever you call it, cafe at the hospital. I had limited options, but I could sort of choose between whatever that limited options were, and I could go for a walk. When Mum was sleeping, I went for a walk up the big hill at Gosford. There's a big hill at the hospital, so that was really good for me. And when I went outside, I would make a point of noticing the birds and noticing the trees and noticing all the different things. And they had a balcony there that where there was you could see the sunset in the evening. So I'd go out and watch the sunset if I was able to, and that was just really beautiful, just seeing the beauty in things, right? So they were the things I could do in amongst all of that, and the rest of my life was a bit of a disaster, and it was very stressful, and there was lots going on. So what I did is I just narrowed it down to what can I do, and sometimes it's what can you do in the moment? What can I do on the day? What can I do in the moment? What can I do right now? And there is always something. You can always breathe, right? So rather than just throw out self care as being, oh, I can only do self care when all my ducks are in a row and when everything's going great, and that's when I can do self care. When you need it more is probably when things aren't all going well. So it's about looking like, what does that look like? And so when your ducks are in a row, which they're never going to be completely in a row, but when things are going well and life is generally just going along sort of somewhat normally, that is when that's when you do really look after yourself. That's when you push up your self-care to a higher level, because you can at that time. And that is when you really create that robust body and mind so that you can cope with things when they happen. Because the truth is, life is going to happen to you. It's not a matter of it's not if, it's when, right? So you're going to have stressful events, you're going to have broken hearts, you're going to have grief, you're going to have loss, you're going to have maybe some financial stress or some job stress, or all the different things that happen in our lives. That's going to happen anyway, right? That's just going to happen. It's just life, right? So, what we do is, when we're in those times in life that are a bit smoother, that's actually when you build up your resilience. That is when you make sure you're eating well. And that is when you learn how to manage your stress. And it is when you focus on getting a good night's sleep, and you do all of the strategies, you do all of the self-care strategies, right? And you take some time for yourself and you look after yourself, all the things you need to do your checkups, whatever. And you do all of that so that when the storm comes, because the storm will come, you will cope with the storm better, because you've set yourself up for it, and you will already have self care things in place. So you already know what a quick 5-minute snack meal is. You already know what are the healthiest options I can get from a cafe if I have to get food from a cafe. You already know to breathe. You already have your favorite app on your phone for meditation. I use Insight Timer. You already maybe have some songs downloaded on your phone in case you have somewhere without the internet and you really just need some music, or a book downloaded on your phone so you can or a podcast or something so you can listen to that. But you already have things in place that you can use at a time where you just don't even have time to think about that and figure it out. But you already know what to do because you already have strategies, right? And you may only be able to use little mini bits of those strategies in that moment, but you will be a lot more resilient if you go into it physically and mentally well, and you've also already got strategies in place that you can easily access and you can easily use in that time and that place. So do not underestimate that we do the work, and it's kind of like, I don't know, looking at a boat metaphor, is that, that when it's you when it's out of the water, you're fixing the hull, you're fixing the boat. I still don't know much about boats. I probably shouldn't have used that as an example because I'm going to get all the words wrong. But essentially, right, you're fixing it and you're doing waterproofing and you're fixing up holes and you're doing all the things you need to do. And you do that so that when your boat is out at sea and it's in the storm, it will survive the storm. It will get through the storm. It will weather the storm, right? It weathers the storm because you did all the work when it was at port and there was no rough seas, right? So we do the same thing in our body where we practice self care, we do the maintenance, we do the things that we need to do when we can, when we do have access, we've got the time, money, whatever it is that we need. And then we are stronger and more robust and more resilient when life happens because you do need to have resilience because life does happen. The storms do come, and sometimes several storms come at once, or they come right one after another after another. That is just life. So, self care looks like assessing. It could be day to day, just assessing on that, maybe on that morning, what does today look like? Where can I fit in self care? Can I fit in self care? What can I do? And it might be, I can remember to breathe. I will do that. And every so often, I'll just remind myself to breathe. And if that's all you do, well done. You might better add to that. I'll remember to drink some water too. I'm going to take my water bottle with me. I know if I do that, that will help me stay hydrated. If I stay hydrated, I'll be able to think. So it might be that, or it might be I'm going to have some eggs for breakfast. I've got time to do that. But then after that, the day is going to take off on me. So I'm going to do that, right? So self care is assessing what you need to maintain your mental and physical health on that day and into the future and at other times. So when you're at port and when you don't have the storms hitting you, that's when you're doing more and you're really shoring things up and really kind of building up your resilience and building up your nutrition and building up your doing a good quality sleep and all the things you need to do. And then when you get hit by a storm, that's when you're assessing day to day and kind of just going like, what can I do today? Because we do a lot of we think about or we think a lot about what we can't do, or we tell ourselves all the things that we can't do. And it's about just turning that around and kind of going, okay, there's a whole bunch of things I can't do. I know that right now. No, I can't do all those things. What can I do? And it's focusing on that one or two things that you can do. And those one or two things will make a big difference. Showing up for ourselves makes a really, really big difference. And that's really all that I'm encouraging you to do here. Show up for yourself. And you will find that just generally in life, when you show up for yourself, it's funny because I talk to people at the beginning of, when it might be the first time they're looking after themselves, or it might be the first time in a while, or they're coming back into it and they're sort of saying, okay, but in the past, I've failed. It's the different language that people might use. They might say I've failed or have fallen off the wagon or off track and things like that. And I've got um, there's a whole lot of language I'll talk to about people about those things. And I'll actually do an episode where I talk about language in the future so I can talk about some of that stuff. But essentially, what happens is we lose trust in ourselves and we don't have a trust in ourselves that we will show up for ourselves when we've experienced a history of maybe not doing it in the past. And there can be a whole lot of reasons that we didn't show up for ourselves in the past. At some point, you just have to be okay with it and move on and just forgive yourself for whatever you did or didn't do. There's usually reasons behind it. Anyway, what happens though is when you do start to show up for yourself, you get more confident in yourself. So, for example, I go to the gym fairly regularly now, and I've been doing it now for about 9 months, I think. This time, see, because in the past I've done it before, and then I've let myself down and not gone back. Now I continue to go back, and there is something about doing that, well, regardless of what I do or how much I do at the gym, that has changed how I feel about myself because I am regularly showing up for myself, right? So when you regularly show up for yourself, you prove to yourself that you're trustworthy, you prove to yourself that you can do it. And that has an effect on lots of other parts in your life where you show up more for yourself. When you're regularly showing up for yourself, you believe in yourself. It gives you a certain level of momentum and a certain level of kind of just confidence in yourself, so regardless of even the outcome. I mean, obviously the outcome's important, and I'm going to the gym for a reason, to look after myself. However, just consistently showing up for yourself is a really important part of it. And when we do it in one area in our life, it often comes to other areas in our life. It often affects other areas of our life. Excuse me, I'll just have a drink. So, showing up for yourself is really, really important, and practicing self care is really, really important. And just knowing to adjust that on the day, look after the ship when it needs more help when it's at the shore, and then get it ready so that when you're out in the storm, you can manage that. There's another little segment, though, I wanted to add in today. I'm a really big fan of music, and I'm really influenced by lyrics and music and things like that. And so I wanted to just bring that in today and just talk about, there is a song that I'm really loving at the moment, and there is some words attached to this song. They're not exactly lyrics, so I'll explain what I mean. So there is an artist. His name is Ren, and he has quite a few songs out, but he's got one particular song that went crazy. It's called Hi Ren. So Hiren, Hi Ren. So look it up. It's worth looking up. It's all over YouTube and all the different places that you can find music. But please look up the YouTube video first and actually watch him perform this song, because there's a visual aspect to it that you might miss if you just listen to it for the first time. So essentially, Ren is a young man, maybe late 20s, 27, something like that. And he has Lyme disease. So he has like tick-borne illness, Lyme disease. And he's from England, and he got this very young, I think when he was in his teens, maybe. And it wasn't he was misdiagnosed. So what happened is, because he was misdiagnosed, he hasn't had the treatment he needed. He's had treatment that he didn't need. He's had sort of whole autoimmune kind of collapse where he's been really, really sick, and I think nearly died. And he's really just spent the last 10+ years of his life just struggling for his health, his life, his mental health, because of all of the trauma that he's experienced at the hands of the medical profession that didn't manage it very well, and all the things that life that have happened to him. He ended up going into psychosis as well. So anyway, this is a young man who's been through a hell of a lot, and he is, I don't know how you I don't always know how to well, he does rapping, so I suppose he's a rapper, but so I wouldn't say it's just rap. But anyway, he's a rapper, and he is an amazing poet, an amazing writer. His language, his masterful language. It's just amazing. Anyway, he's done this song Hi Ren, and Hi Ren is all the different parts of himself talking to each other. And it even goes back to the sort of dawning of time, and it's quite chilling and very clever and very well done. Just a warning that language, and be aware, it's not for the faint-hearted. It's really full on, but it's really, really interesting and really good, and ultimately has a kind of heroic, beautiful kind of end that it comes to. However, at the end of this song, which is just, honestly, just listen to it, just listen to the words of the song. You have to really slow it down. There's so many, so many words, and the words are great. And there's about 1 million reaction videos that are worth watching, because some really great people have reacted to it and gone over the music and the voice and the words and everything. But at the very end of the video, at the very end of the song, the camera pans into him closely, and he just talks a little bit about his history. And there's a particular couple of lines that he said in it that I believe are a really important part of healing, and a really important part of the healing journey, whether it's emotional healing or physical healing. But I think that his experience has taught him, he's clearly been through a lot, and he clearly has a really good handle on what it's like to really, really fight for your health, and to work so hard for it, and to just goes through so much, and he's been through so much pain, and he's he just has a real good insight into the healing process and what it's about. And so this little paragraph, I'm just going to read what he says. It's just anyway, watch it, please watch it. Don't just rely on me to say it. You need him saying it, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read a little bit of it. But at the end, he says the one line he says in particular, when he's talking about his health journey, he says, "It was never really a battle for me to win. It was an eternal dance. And like a dance, the more rigid I became, the harder it got. The more I cursed my clumsy footsteps, the more I struggled. So I got older and I learned to relax and I learned to soften, and the dance got easier." Now, those are some profound words, and they are really the key to healing. And what I mean by that is, first of all, he said it was never really a battle for me to win. Sometimes we're trying to win on our health journey, and like, and that's great, and there's nothing wrong with winning, but sometimes we just have to just practice that self-care and just do what we need to do each day. Getting obsessed about sort of how it should be or how it shouldn't be, uh, getting really fixated on that can really not be helpful sometimes. But the really most powerful part of it that he said is that he said, it was a dance. It's an eternal dance. And the more rigid he became, the harder it got. And then the more I cursed my clumsy footsteps, the more I struggled. And so I got older and I learned to relax and I learned to soften, and the dance got easier. And essentially, what I take from that is that when we get really rigid in life, we get really rigid about how things should be or what outcome we want, or we get a story in our head and get really rigid about stuff and really battle stuff. Sometimes it makes it a whole lot harder. Sometimes healing is about softening, and whether that's healing in relationships or whether that's healing physically, mentally, sometimes it's about softening. Softening does not mean giving up and laying down and dying. um, in the context I'm talking about here, softening just means accepting where you are, accepting the process, accepting that you can't control all of the outcomes, and just focusing on what you need to right now to manage your health. And so sometimes our rigidity, the rigidity that we have around the stories we have around life and health and outcomes that we want and how it should be, and it's not fair and it should be like this, it should be like that. Some of the things I talked about in the last episode of the podcast. Sometimes when we get so rigid about all of those things, that rigidity, holding ourselves in that rigid place, is actually physically and emotionally draining on us. And sometimes it can stop us from achieving what we need to achieve, because the rigidity, being in that rigid position, does a few things. One, it's like very just physically draining and it's physically holding us in a position. But secondly, when we're really rigid about a certain story or how things should be, we often don't see opportunities. We don't allow any space for any solutions or any opportunities to come into our life. We're so caught up and this is the story and this is how it should be, that there's no space for anything else. So sometimes when we soften and we go into more of an acceptance, and just acceptance of where we're at and what our limitations are right now and what we can control, and we're just working on that stuff. Sometimes when we do that, we create space, we soften physically and emotionally, and softening physically and emotionally is often then what allows us to start to have some healing, but also to start changing our relationship with ourselves, our relationships with our body, our relationships with others. So if your relationship, sometimes when we're really hard about stuff, we have this relationship with our body that's just really negative, or relationship with other people, or relationship with our mind, whatever. When we're just really rigid about things, rigidity just in when things are rigid, eventually they just break, right? So having that level of, and an engineer could explain this really, really well, but how you make things, buildings are made so that they'll bend so far and all that kind of stuff. talk to the people who build buildings in Taiwan. They'll explain what they need to do. There's a whole engineering behind it, right? That it doesn't, it can't be rigid. It has to be able to sway a certain amount, right? Human beings, we need that. We need to be able to sway a certain amount. We need to, yes, be grounded. Yes, have our basis and our foundation and our grounding, but not be so completely rigid that we can't move. Because if we do that, it makes life so much harder, and also then we're more likely to break because we're so rigid. So I just think that Ren's words in that song, at the end of that song, and in that song, if the words in that song will just blow your mind. Uh, he's just very profound, and a very profound insight that is really, sometimes when you're on a healing journey, that the that is where it's the softening is where the healing happens. And it could probably be a whole other episode in itself, but I do understand why we don't soften. We choose not to soften because we're fearful, or because we're afraid of letting go what we've always known to be true or thought was true, or we're afraid of being hurt. When we've been hurt a lot, and when we've been through a lot, and when we have a lot of trauma and grief, that is often a time where we get quite hard and we don't want to soften. And that is and there's a whole bunch of reasons we don't want to, and sometimes you're not ready to soften, and that is fine. It's not about just Fiona said I should soften. We're not ready to do what we're not ready to do. That's fine. However, a lot of healing happens when we get to that place where we're ready to soften and see. So he said, the more I cursed my clumsy footsteps, we're cursing ourselves. We're cursing ourselves and just holding ourselves really, really hard. The more I struggle, so it's struggling as well. It's making it a struggle. Does it have to be a struggle, and then he just said, he learned to relax and soften, and the dance got easier. And when you think about dancing, even just in the terms of dancing, if you soften, it gets easier. If you're really hard, you can't do the steps, but when you soften, it's easier. So anyway, I just thought that Ren's words are really profound. And even though I've never been a really big connoisseur of rap music, I do like some, and I do really appreciate there's some amazing poets with amazing language, and Ren's experience has been so profound that the amount of artistic the amount of art that's coming out of him is phenomenal. He's in Canada for 12 months at the moment having treatment. So I don't think he's able to make too much right now, but I think I'm looking forward to seeing more of what he does in the future, because he's a pretty phenomenal artist, and he's obviously understands the healing journey better than many. Often that's how you learn it. You learn it from doing it, which is my experience as well. Anyway, go and check out Hi Ren. Just Google it, you will find it. He is amazing, but it's not for the faint-hearted. Be warned, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but very clever, very insightful young man. Anyway, it was great to chat to you today, and I look forward to chatting to you again next week. I'll see you later. Thanks. Bye.